Chapter 3 Boundless Desert. The monks were crying because of the venerable monk Jauma's death, but some of them were still able to take care of the wounded by bandaging up their wounds and carrying them into the guest rooms. Suddenly there came an incessant banging from the vat underneath the huge bell. Not knowing what kind of monster was present, the monks looked at each other with blank faces. Not knowing what to do, started to chant the sutra of the High King Zhao Wangjing. But the banging continued through all the chants of help the sufferers and Amida Buddha. Finally, a dozen or so of the more courageous monks pulled the huge bell back up again with a huge thick rope. As soon as they lifted the vat, a huge ball of meat came rolling out from underneath it. Scared beyond words, the monks scattered. That ball of meat suddenly stood up. It turned out to be Han Baoju. Being covered for the last half of the fight, he had no idea what had happened. Looking around, he noticed Monk Zhao Mu had died and all his sworn brothers were greatly injured and almost panicked. He walked over to Qiuchuji and was about to strike down at his head with his golden dragon whip. "Third brother, no!" Quan Jinfa shouted. "Why not?" Han Baoju demanded in anger. "You just can't," was all Quan Jinfa could get out because of the pain in his abdomen. Even though both of his legs were wounded, Kazhener's mind was still working fine. He took out the antidote for his poison and instructed the monks to give the right amounts to both Qiuchuji and Han Zhaoying, all the while explaining what had happened to Han Baoju. Enraged, Han Baoju was about to go chasing after Duan Tiandi when Kazhener shouted, "We'll find that bastard sooner or later. First, help those of your brothers who suffered internal injuries." Both Zhu Chong and Nanshi Ren had suffered severe internal injuries, and that kick to Quan Jinfa's stomach was quite a blow too. Zhang Asheng's collarbone was broken and his chest was hit as well, knocking him out temporarily. Once he woke up, it turned out he wasn't in any mortal danger. He immediately began helping others in the temple. The monks of the Fawa Monastery Temple of Oriental Zen sent a couple of errand runners to report the events to Abbot Kumu at the Yunlu Monastery Cloudy Pavilion Temple, and also began to make funeral arrangements for the monk Zhao Mu. After several days, the poison in Qiuchuji and Han Zhaoying's body was eradicated. Being the medical expert that he was, Qiuchuji immediately began combining herbs and treating Zhu Chong and others, as well as massaging and snapping bones back into place. Luckily, everyone's kung fu base was strong enough so that the internal, as well as the external injuries, were not serious. After several more days, everyone was able to sit up again. One day, all 8 of them gathered in one of the monks' rooms and reflected on how they were manipulated into fighting each other, resulting in the death of the monk Zhao Mu and injuries to all parties. All of them were silent, not knowing what to say. After a while, Han Zhaoying finally broke the silence. "Everyone knows about Priestess intelligence and wit, and the 7 of us didn't exactly begin wandering the world yesterday. Yet we were all manipulated into this by some little nobody. If this ever gets out, everyone in the martial world will laugh at us. Reverend, do you have any idea as to how to clean up this mess?" Qiuchuji had been blaming himself for the last couple of days, thinking that if only he had sat down and calmly talked with the monk Zhao Mu, then all of this could have been avoided. So, in deference, he turned to Kazhener. "Big brother K, what do you say?" Kazhener's temper was bad, to begin with. After his eyes were blinded, it got even worse. The fact that Qiuchuji himself brought down all 7 of them combined was, in fact, what he considered to be one of the biggest embarrassments of his life. Coupled with the fact that the pain in his legs from the sword wound was still throbbing, he was barely able to hold back his indignation. He sneered and replied, "Priest Q uses his sword skills to take down anyone in his way and never needs to respect anyone. Why consult us over this matter?" Qiuchuji was taken aback for a moment but immediately realized that he was still angry about the matter. He stood up, cupped his fist, and bowed to the 7 freaks. "I was wrong in my actions. I was too rude and headstrong. This entire matter is entirely my fault and I ask you all for your forgiveness." Zhu Chong and the rest of the freaks returned the gesture. Kei Zhener pretended not to notice and coldly replied, "I say the 7 of us have lost all of our rights to meddle in the affairs of the martial world. We should settle down here, fishing, chopping wood, or whatever. As long as Priest Q does not come around again, we would at least be able to spend the rest of our lives in peace." Q Chuji blushed a little from that verbal slash. After a brief pause, he suddenly stood up and said, "Since I was at fault this time, I will never dare step into this area again. As for retribution for Monk Zhaoma's death, it will all fall on my shoulders and I will kill that bastard with my own hands and avenge him. Having said all that I need to say, it's now time for me to leave." Q Chuji bowed towards everyone again and began to walk out. "Stop!" Kei Zhener shouted. Q Chuji turned around and said, "Does Big Brother K have something else to say?" "You have injured all of us," Kei Zhener replied, "and you expect all of this to just disappear because you said a couple of words? Then what does Big Brother K want? As long as it is within my abilities I will try my best to do it." "We just can't let this slide right now," Kei Zhener answered, "so it would be nice if Reverend gives us something more." Although the 7 freaks were all very righteous and moral individuals, they were also very proud and acted very strangely, making them well deserving the title of 7 freaks. Each is a master of kung fu and they always worked together, so they had never come out on the short end of a struggle when going up against others in the martial world. Several years ago they got into a fight with the Haiyang clan. The 7 of them killed over 100 or so of the Haiyang clan members on the shores of the Yangtze. Back then Han Zhaoying was still a child, but she still managed to kill 2 foes. The name 7 Freaks of the South became famous throughout the martial world. Defeat by the hands of Q Chuji did not go down very well with any of them. Add that to the fact that the monk Zhao Mu, a good friend of the freaks, died, one could argue, because of Q Chuji's rashness. But there was still the fact that a woman was hidden inside the temple and she was the widow of Go Zhaotian, as Q Chuji had claimed. This made the freaks partly to blame. However, at this moment, the freaks had forgotten about that. "I was hit by your projectile," Q Chuji replied. "And if it wasn't for Big Brother K's antidote, I would have been dead a long time ago. So for this fight, I wholeheartedly admit defeat." "If that's the case," Kei Zhener replied, "then leave that sword that you carry on your back and you can go." He knew that if the 2 sides fought again at this time only the Han siblings would be able to put up a fight. And that victory for his side was impossible. But all of the freaks would rather die than to let the matter pass like this. This angered Q Chuji greatly. "I have already given you people a lot of faces and that should be enough. I also admitted defeat, what else do you want? The sword is for my protection," he continued, "just like that staff Big Brother K carries around. Are you poking fun at my blindness?" Kei Zhener shouted back. "I dare not. We are all injured right now, so it's hard to actually fight at this moment." Kei Zhener shouted angrily. "So I invite Priest Q to come and duel with the 7 of us a year from today at the Pavilion of the Drunken Immortal." Q Chuji frowned at that remark. He thought, because the 7 freaks weren't bad people, there was really no point in keeping this grudge going between us. The day after the Venerable Zhao Mu died, Han Baoju could have killed me easily once he got out from underneath the bell. Besides, this whole matter was caused more or less by my own rashness. A real man knows what's right and wrong. If he's wrong then he should admit it. To sort all this out with the freaks won't be easy either." After thinking silently for a bit, an idea suddenly came to him. "If you really want to determine who is better between us, then we could do that," he said. "But only according to the rules I lay down. Otherwise, I have already lost to Hero Zhu at the Pavilion of the Drunken Immortal, and I lost again fighting here in the temple. I have already lost twice and would inevitably lose the 3rd time as well. There's no point in going any further." Han Baoju, Han Zhaoying and Zhang Asheng immediately stood up. The other four could not stand but all sat up as much as they could. They answered in unison. When the 7 freaks of the South duel with someone, we always let our opponent choose the time, place, and method. Seeing how competitive they were, Qiuchuji smiled. So I decide how we should fight no matter what? Figuring that no matter what dirty trick Qiuchuji would come up with, it wouldn't necessarily mean defeat for them, Zhu Chong and Quan Jinthe answered simultaneously. Thoughts right. A man's word, Qiuchuji replied. Wild horses can't bring back. Han Zhaoying finished, but Ke Zhen'er remained silent. If you people feel that my way is unfair in any way, Qiuchuji continued, then I will admit defeat right here and now. Obviously planning to gain ground by giving up a little, he knew that the freaks would never let him admit defeat that easily because of their competitiveness. There's no need to play all these word games to anger us, just tell us what it is, Ke Zhen'er replied, as expected. Qiuchuji sat down and began to explain. The method I have in my mind might be a little bit dragged out, but what it really measures is abilities and skills and is susceptible to some temporary mishaps or conditions. Everyone knows any martial artist can fight with blades and fists. We all have names in the martial world and absolutely cannot stoop down to the level of lowly underlings. What's left to fight with if we can't do it with blades or fists? Are we having a drinking contest again? All of the freaks wondered at that comment. This huge contest between us, you 7 against me, will not only measure our kung fu skills, but also our will, determination, and wit. With this contest, we will see once and for all who the real hero is. This entire conversation had all of the 7 freaks shaking in anticipation and excitement. Stop stalling, tell us. Han Zhaoying demanded. The harder it is the better. If we are competing meditating, making medicine, fortune-telling, or ghost banishing, then we are no match for Priest Q at all. Zhu Chong said with a smile. And I don't really want to compete with second brother Zhu in stealing chickens or taking sheep. Qiuchuji replied with a smile. This caused a little bit of laughter from Han Zhaoying, who quickly went back to urging Qiuchuji on. Come on, say it. At the very bottom of all of this, and the misunderstanding that led to our fight, was saving the descendants of a couple of good men. This matter would be best ended in that way as well. Qiuchuji went on to tell how he met with Guo Zhaotian and Yang Taizin all the way to how he pursued Duan Tiandi to this temple. Throughout his entire explanation, the freaks could not stop cursing Jin as well as the Song government for its corruption. After he finished the story, Qiuchuji went on. That woman that Duan Tiandi dragged away was Guo Zhaotian's widow, Madame Li. Other than Big Brother K and the Han siblings, I'm sure the other 4 of you saw them. I remember her voice, Ke Zhen'er interrupted. I will never forget that voice. Great. Qiuchuji continued. As for Yang Taizin's widow, Mrs. Bao, there is no clue as to where she might be. I have seen her before, but you people haven't. So what I propose we do is, the 7 of us would go rescue Mrs. Li while you go save Mrs. Bao, and that whoever succeeds wins. Right? Han Zhaoying eagerly cut in. Qiuchuji smiled and replied. Saving people, while definitely not easy, can't really be used to determine who's a hero and who's not. What I have in mind is much harder and more troublesome. So what are you suggesting? Ke Zhen'er demanded. Both of the women are pregnant, Qiuchuji explained. After we save them, we must make sure they settle down nicely and allow them to give birth. After that, I will teach the Yang child while the 7 of you teach the Go child. The 7 freaks were getting more and more amazed with every word that he said. They were practically mesmerized when Han Baoju cut in. Then what? After 18 years, when the kids are both 18, all of us, as well as invited friends from all over the martial realm, shall gather at the pavilion of the drunken immortal once again for a huge feast. Then, when we are all sufficiently full and merry, Well, let the two kids duel to see whether it is my disciple who is better or is the disciple of the 7 heroes really the best. The 7 freaks stared at each other, completely speechless. Chuji continued. If the 7 heroes fight me once more and defeat me, then it could easily be because you outnumber me. Not much glory there. But if I pass all my kung fu to one person and you guys pass all of your kung fu to one person, then whichever one wins must mean that their master or masters were better. Filled with pride, Kazhenur slammed his iron staff onto the floor. All right. Thoughts what will do. What if that bastard Duan Tiandi has already killed Mrs. Li? What then? Quan Jinfa asked. Thoughts just the luck of the draw, Chuji replied. The heavens wanted me to win, what more could be said? All right. Han Baoju pitched in with his opinion. Rescuing widows and orphans was the right thing to do, to begin with. Even if we weren't competing against you, we would do it. Chuji gave him a thumbs up and declared. Third brother Han is exactly right. If the 7 heroes are willing to care for the Go child to adulthood, then I would like to thank everyone for my late brother Go. He bowed to each of them again. This idea of yours is rather cunning, Zhu Chang observed. With those several sentences of yours, we brothers and sisters would have to give up 18 years of our lives? Chuji's face changed color a little and he suddenly let out a loud laugh. What's so funny? Han Zhaoying demanded. I have long heard and admired the name of the 7 freaks of the south, Chuji replied. Everyone says that the 7 heroes are truly righteous heroes who are always there when you need them. But today, I see that the rumors were greatly exaggerated. This made all of the freaks furious. Han Baoju slammed his fist down onto the bench that he was sitting on and was about to say something when Chuji cut him off. Since ancient times, for real heroes and men, making a friend was for life in every way, and giving one's life for a friend would be no big thing if loyalty and friendship called for it. Nobody has ever heard of Jing Kei and Nizeng haggling about some small thing. The Yang and Go family are in need of help right now, how could anyone start haggling about it? After that little speech, Zhu Chang's face was flushed with embarrassment. He flicked his fan and replied, The Reverend is right. I realize my mistake now. The 7 of us will take on this matter. Chuji stood up and said. Today is the 24th of the 3rd month, 18 years from today at noon. We'll meet again upstairs in the pavilion of the Drunken Immortal. There, in front of all of the martial world, we will find out who's the real hero. With a flick of his sleeve, he walked out of the door. Han Baoju shouted. I'm off to look for that Duan Tiandi now. If he's crawled into a tortoise hole and disappeared, we are going to have to waste a lot of energy. He was the only one among the 7 freaks that wasn't injured, so he charged out of the door, mounted Wind Chaser, his yellow horse, and began to go chase after Duan Tiandi and Li Ping. Third brother. Zhu Chang shouted. You don't know what they look like. But Han Baoju wasn't the patient type, and with Wind Chaser well deserving of his name, he was long gone. Once he was out of the temple, Duan Tiandi ran as fast as his legs would carry him, all the while dragging Li Ping. Only after he was sure that nobody was chasing after him did he finally stop and take a breath. Then he ran to the bank of the nearest river and jumped on the first boat that he saw. Taking out his saber and putting it up against the neck of the fisherman, he ordered the man to start moving the boat. The rivers and canals south of the Yangtze were as dense as a spider web, and boats were the everyday mode of transportation. As common as horses and carriages were up north. Hence the saying, Northerners ride horses, Southerners ride boats. With Duan Tiandi looking as vicious as he did, as well as being dressed like an official, how could the fisherman dare disobey? He immediately undocked and guided the boat out of the city. What a mess. If I go back to Linan, if nothing else, my uncle will kill me at first sight. Duan Tiandi thought to himself. Probably the best thing would be to head north to get away for a while. Hopefully, That bastard of a Taoist and those 7 freaks have all died from their injuries, and then my uncle will get so angry that he passes away. Then I can return and get my position back." Once he made up his mind, he instructed the fisherman to start heading north. Even though Han Baoyu's horse was faster, he was nevertheless searching on land, and thus let the two of them slip through. Duan Tiandi switched boats a couple more times as well and changed his clothes and forced Li Ping to change hers. After 10 days or so, he arrived in Yangzhou and decided to check into an inn. He was hoping to be able to settle down in the city for a while and wait out the storm. By an extraordinary coincidence, he just happened to overhear someone inquiring about his whereabouts. Shocked, he peeped through the little crack in the door and saw an amazingly ugly, short, and fat guy with a beautiful young girl. Both of them had a Jiaxing accent. Guessing that they were some of the 7 freaks, he immediately grabbed Li Ping and ran out of the back door. Luckily, the Yangzhou native at the front desk did not quite understand their dialect and didn't understand what they were asking about. This made it possible for Duan Tiandi to get away and rent another boat. Not daring to stop even for a second, he made his way north, up the Grand Canal, all the way to the shore of Lago Post on the shores of Mount Wei Lake inside the borders of Shandong Province. Li Ping, who was quite plain-looking and whose stomach was bulging by now, was spending days on end cursing and crying. So even though Duan Tiandi was by no means a gentleman, he never had any inclinations towards her. All the two ever did was fight and curse at each other. There wasn't a moment of peace between them. After several more days, that ugly dwarf and a pretty girl showed up again. Duan Tiandi had hoped to hide in the back of their accommodations. Li Ping, knowing that her rescuers were near, began to shout at the top of her lungs. Duan Tiandi immediately stuffed a wad of cotton into her mouth and beat her. Li Ping struggled and shouted for all she was worth. Even though she wasn't successful in her attempt to get their attention, it was too much of a close call for Duan Tiandi. At first, Duan Tiandi brought Li Ping along hoping to use her as a hostage and thereby help him get out of a jam should it ever come to that. But the situation had changed. Figuring that it would be much easier if he was by himself and that this feisty woman was a disaster waiting to happen, he decided that it would be best to kill her. Once the Han cousins had left, he took out his saber. Li Ping had been waiting the entire time for an opportunity to avenge her husband's death. However, she was tied up every night, making it impossible. Now, upon seeing the murderous look in his eyes, she prayed, "Zhaogi, please protect me and allow me to kill his monster. Then I will join you." She reached into her shirt and placed her hands on the dagger that Chuji gave her. She had hidden the dagger very well and was able to slip it past Duan Tiandi's search. With a chuckle, Duan Tiandi raised his saber and swung down at her. Prepared to die, Li Ping summoned all her strength, pointed the dagger at Duan Tiandi, and charged. Feeling a burst of murderous cold air upon his face, Duan Tiandi flicked his saber in an attempt to knock the dagger out of her hand. Unexpectedly, the dagger was so sharp that, with a loud ping, it sliced the saber in half. The saber fell to the floor as the tip of the dagger touched Duantin's chest. Shocked, Duantin instinctively jumped back. Nevertheless, the front of his shirt was slashed wide open. In complete shock and panic, he picked up the chair at his side and shouted, "Put that down this instant or else I'll kill you." Li Ping was exhausted and the baby in her belly was kicking non-stop. Not able to fight any longer, she fell to the floor and tried to catch her breath. But she was still clutching the dagger tightly. Duan Tiandi was afraid that Han Baoju would come around again. If he ran off by himself, he was afraid that Li Ping would reveal where he was going to those chasing him. So he immediately forced her onto another boat and went further north up the Grand Canal, passing Linqing, Dezhou, and arrived in Hebei Province. Every time he set up camp, no matter how remote the location, before long there would be several men arriving to look for him. Eventually, the ugly Gnam and the girl were joined by a staff-wielding blind man. Luckily, none of them recognized him, so he was able to escape every time.